All right, I think we'll get started. I think most people have joined who are joining. If others join in, that's great. And for those that are unable, we will post this to our normal channels after we do it. So thank you everyone for taking the time to join us today for our latest installment of Solutions for Success. My name is Jonathan Hamilton. You can see John Zeri on video as well. And today's topic is, are you ready to retire your file server? A topic that's come up with many of our clients and something that we've done a number of projects with different organizations, especially as they've moved into the cloud and Microsoft 365. Sort of the next evolution for a lot of organizations is how do we either move the infrastructure that we've got into Azure, and a component of that always is file servers. And how do we move that content and that data, not as is, but in a more structured way to leverage the tools and platforms that everybody is entitled to in Microsoft 365. So we're just going to walk you through today a couple of the discussion points, areas to think about as you plan for these migrations. Again, everyone is a little different, and yet at the same time, the process and the approach is quite consistent into what you need to consider and how you get from A to B. So I think we're ready to get started.
All right, thank you, Jonathan. So again, Jonathan and I are gonna go through the slides together and cover the areas that involve with the migrating from file server to your cloud. And just to start, most of you know us, just a little bit about Point Alliance, get right to the subject and which app to use, and jump to the live demo. So that's it. Let's just go to the next slide. Again, Point Alliance, we've been in business for over 20 years. We are Microsoft Gold partner. Our competencies are in the 11 different areas, 4 gold and 7 silver. And our team, we're proud of that fact that our team is 100% Microsoft certified. You can find additional information, of course, on our website, pointalliance.com, company profile. So I encourage you to visit us there. Again, my name is John Zeri. You can find me on the LinkedIn at the link below, and that's my pre-COVID photos. And this is Jonathan's contact information if you need to get a hold of us, and our LinkedIn address. As Jonathan mentioned, we will post this presentation on our website and our social media channels and YouTube, so you can always find this information later. All right.
I'll jump back in. As John mentioned, we'll sort of tag team this to give you the information, and we'll let you read the slides and again talk to them at maybe a higher level. So, are you ready to retire your file server? That is the topic of the Solution for Success. In our opinion, everybody is ready, and you should be ready because of the benefits that you get in Microsoft 365. As you know, your file server storage has probably evolved over time. It's hierarchical. The permissions are broken all over the place. And so there's unique permissions to different folders and subfolders and files. There's user directories and common directories, personal directories, shared directories. And really, again, it's evolved over time for different reasons. But, we strongly feel that the time is right to get off of these file servers and get onto more of a collaborative platform. In saying that, it's easy to say, but there's a little more thought that needs to go into the process, because as you move those files into Microsoft 365, there needs to be an understanding of where you're moving them to. Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint, even though all of these are backed by SharePoint from a document management perspective, each have their place as a solution for collaboration. So understanding a little bit more about Teams, SharePoint, and OneDrive, for those that are less familiar is important. But again, they all give you that collaboration, sharing, document versioning, all of these features, web-based interface, as well as being able to open up files in your local desktop for your Microsoft Office documents. So, it isn't a one size fits all, and we need to look at the different attributes of what you're trying to do with your files. I guess one of the other sort of main takeaways that we've seen with clients is, telling them not to spend too much time doing a deep dive on sort of what you're doing today and trying to recreate all the unique permissions and securities that may have been set up, and really taking this opportunity to simplify the structure from a data repository perspective and security perspective. Again, at the end of the day, we really would like to avoid individual names showing up in security and permissions for files and folders. It makes it hard to manage. It makes it hard to administer. When people leave the organization or join the organization, the cleanup process is not easy. So, wherever possible, if we can leverage groups now moving forward, that's going to make our lives easier. So if a new employee joins the finance team or the HR team or the IT team, we put them in the right groups. Those could be security groups, they could be M365 groups, but a handful of groups, and they get access to the right content. So again, we're not digging through a whole bunch of files and folders and trying to figure out where a new employee needs to gain access.
All right, and just a couple of side notes. The one is that if you have any question, please just feel free to post your question and we answer them as we go. And again, as an end user, just to kind of simplify things, again, as Jonathan mentioned, our options are when you come to Microsoft, you need to decide where your data goes to. And again, between the Teams, OneDrive, and SharePoint. As an end user, one of the things I enjoy to do that make my life easier is the fact of that real-time collaboration. You're touching the version control, that I can go back to any version that I've worked on, sharing with the colleagues and all working on the same document. Those are the features that is not available on your current file server. If you want to share a document with your team members, what do? You attach it to email. So right there, you have lost that collaboration feature. So again, many reasons to move to the cloud, and again, there are lots of things to consider. So we are here to help you. And the next thing is that provide more scalable and flexible storage solution. Again, you don't have to constantly worry about your hardware and upgrade and the maintenance of it, right? So because again, every 4 years, perhaps you have to say, okay, now I need to upgrade the server. I need to worry about the patches. I need to do those things. So again, those costs, that cause lots of cost, and then you can eliminate those things. And also you have to consider, a part of your subscription to Microsoft 365, you are given the storage space that is available. Why not take advantage of it? There's no extra cost to it, right? So everyone get 1 terabyte of space on the personal OneDrive, and on the SharePoint side, every organization start from 1 terabyte from 10 gig per user. So it depends how many users you have, that number increases, and why not take advantage of that, because you're already paying for those services. And next thing on also want to touch on this one is the security, right? Again, you want to make sure that it is all secure, and we're not talking about the document level, but on a high level, your storage is secure and those things. And the security on the cloud is by far more sophisticated than what would you have on premises. And one thing that we don't have a note on it, is the fact of is that lots of organizations these days, especially post-COVID, that we work in the hybrid environment, always have to worry about multi-level VPN and firewall just to get the files, right? And that's become a deterrent for people to upload the documents as they should, or use the document from file servers, because there's too many steps to access a one file, and those all goes away, and you can take advantage of the security within the cloud.
I'll jump back in.
Sure, please.
So, so again, as we talked about, moving files from your file servers up into the cloud, where do we want to move this content? And at a high level, this slide tells us, OneDrive on the left is just for me. It's my files. It sort of replaces your personal directory, your F drive or your U drive, whatever you used to have. Teams is me and my team, meant for collaboration, and then SharePoint, the wider organization. So, to give you a key decision point between Teams and SharePoint as well, is just understanding that team security is based on every member of the team has the same level of access to the data and the content. So they can modify, they can create, they can edit, they can delete, which again, me and my team in my department, let's say it's HR and we're working on policies, let's say it's finance, we're working on reports, this is all fine. But as soon as the permissions change, or as soon as you say, well, for these documents, I would like this set of users who can modify and create them, but a different group who can view them. That's not Teams anymore, right? That is SharePoint, and we use simple examples that may seem funny, but they have occurred in other organizations where they've been using a Teams. They've been set up a Microsoft team for the whole organization, and they've posted templates in there for people to use, whether it's submitting expenses, submitting forms. They submit they put a Microsoft Word document in there, and the first person who goes in opens up that Word document and says, "Oh, that's great. I'll fill this out for my vacation request or my expense submission." And all of a sudden, they've updated the whole template, so the next user coming in sees their updates. Not ideal or not exactly what you're looking for. Again, there will be different scenarios where, again, you do want everybody to be able to create the content and manage it. But as soon as you get into, again, certain users that can view as opposed to edit, as opposed to delete, and those users could even be external. They don't have to be internal. But that's when we look at SharePoint and a SharePoint interface. And that conversation starts bleeding into SharePoint-based intranets, and now many people are familiar with the Teams interface from a SharePoint interface. When do we want people coming in from there? And it is for these SharePoint sites where again, the permission levels and the security are slightly different, and we want to help educate users not only on the base functionality, as John referenced, around collaboration and versioning and sharing documents, which is common across OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint, but where do I go to find the information that I'm looking for? And when do I open SharePoint? You can open SharePoint and open the SharePoint site that supports a Microsoft team, but maybe you don't want to direct people there because maybe it's going to confuse them. Right? They don't see the Teams interface. They don't see the chat there. They don't see some of those other Teams features. So, we'd normally recommend, if you're setting up a Microsoft team, let's drive people to the Teams interface and access it that way. If you're setting up a bunch of SharePoint sites, again, that are not connected to a team, let's make sure that people are comfortable going in through SharePoint, that they understand sort of SharePoint search, that we've connected these sites to a hub. And again, we won't go down that road in today's session, but there's lots of things to do from a usability perspective in SharePoint to make it easier for users to find the information that they want, and again, even connect that information to their Windows Explorer. So we will see, again, as we move files from file servers, and users that are very comfortable in a Windows Explorer type interface, they get onto the web, they get into Teams. Now, it's not on a single file server. Their content maybe spans 10 or 20 different SharePoint sites. I'm used to Windows Explorer. How do I get around? I can't find what I'm looking for. Search, the user interface is very important. And then some of the features about creating shortcuts from SharePoint and Teams into your OneDrive to give you that look and feel, or depending on your job or your role within the organization, again, that enhanced usability of Maybe it's editing those files in Adobe Acrobat locally. Maybe it's uploading those files from your environment to an external portal where, again, we're not sort of dragging and dropping one, but we're uploading 10 or 12 files at a time. So there will be a bunch of these use cases. It's important to understand that different departments work with files in different ways. So even when we, set up the interfaces and connect these sites or launch teams and do the training, you will find that different departments have slightly different use cases that you'll need to address, and understand that may not be aware of today. If you're in IT, you might think, oh, well, it's all securities and folders and subfolders, and once that's done, that's fine once we figure that out. But no, how do they interact with these files? How do they collaborate? Is there external collaboration or not? What is the document life cycle as they create these documents? So when we, use the example of an HR department working on HR policies, again, we might work on 10 different versions of that policy. Then we might publish that policy out to the whole organization. So it moves from a Microsoft team to a SharePoint site. And maybe that file gets converted from a Microsoft Word document to a PDF, just as a simple example. So understanding the document lifecycle about the different types of documents and the content that different departments use is certainly important in being able to structure their data and, again, provide us, a solution that's going to work for them.
All right, thank you. So these are the next few slides are a bit text heavy. If you're not going to go step by step through this thing, but as a reference point that you can look at it later. But again, we talk about OneDrive, Teams, and SharePoint. Again, there are steps need to be taken into it, and some are more simple than other ones. But again, with the OneDrive, what do you want to keep into consideration when you moving your stuff from files from the file server to the OneDrive on the personal side? Because in the old days we have our own like a Z drive that was your personal drive, and you put the stuff there. So you want to kind of look into the clean up your personal drive, set up OneDrive, sync the data, and so on. So we won't go too much details. We put the same steps for the Teams migration. What need to be done? Again, identifying the files and the folders to migrate. And as Jonathan mentioned, you want to kind of think about that. Teams, again, it's going to be in the moment, the stuff, the project basis want to work with, and not everything goes into the Teams. Again, the plan migration, migrate the data, and the train the users. That's very important. Again, training is in many cases get missed, and we kind of make an assumption that people know how to use the tool. So training is very important. Come to the Teams. And then SharePoint migration, again, plan it, prepare the file server, set up the SharePoint, migrate the files, update links and references in case people were using the file server and have access to it and so on. Communicate with the users, educate the users what they do, and monitor and maintain that. One of the most interesting subject that comes up, and I let Jonathan jump on the next slide, is the fact of that making a decision when you move into the SharePoint, how we kind of structure the data. Of course, when you come from file server, everything is folder level, is a directory, folder, and subfolder, and so on. But again, with the SharePoint, there's an option to do to tags, right? So you tag the document, you don't care about the folders and so on. And again, there is no right or wrong answers. Every case is different. And when you think about SharePoint, you don't have to make a decision for the entire SharePoint environment. Every SharePoint site could have different setup and so on. And Jonathan is very familiar with this. I think we almost have this daily conversation with our clients about, okay, how we should approach it and so on. So pass it back to Jonathan.
Sure. Thank you, John. So yeah, as John mentioned, Microsoft in your move to the cloud would strongly encourage you to flatten your data and your folder structure. So, many organizations will have folders and subfolders that may go 10, 12, even deeper than that. And Microsoft would tell you flatten it all out and create tags, for all of those folders. So whether that's, a client folder or a year or a document type or, whatever you're capturing in those folders and subfolders, they'd suggest for you to use tags, and that, can make for better searching. It can, again, make it easier as you sort, filter, and categorize your content. But at the same time, in reality, what we've seen in organizations is, though this may be a great concept, the reality is if you start asking your users to start applying 8 to 10 tags to every document that they put in a SharePoint site, they will quickly start working around everything that you've built, and the structure you've set up. So, usually what ends up happening is some sort of hybrid. We see, I would say between 0 and 4 tags being used, and there may still be folders and subfolders as part of the solution. So, when we talk about that metadata and those tags, as John mentioned, there's a couple of ways that it can be done. As he mentioned, this can be done in each site, in each document library. You can capture, different tags and different pieces of information that are relevant to that site or that department or that group. We can also use the term store in SharePoint, and we can have consistent tags that we're applying across the organization. Let's say there were, 2 or 3 that were very important. Maybe it's document type and year, or it's document type and client, or something like that. So again, we can manage those at a higher level. As we talk about the migration of content into SharePoint and Teams, again, we talked about simplifying security. We really want to try and manage that security at the repository level. So, at the SharePoint site, at the document library, and similar with tags and supporting metadata, we'd like to do that at as high a level as possible. One of the other neat things that not a lot of organizations make use of in SharePoint are document sets. So a document set is sort of like a folder that has other attributes. So when we talk about metadata as an example, and you start thinking about, geez, I work with 20 files, 50 files, 100 files a day. How am I supposed to tag 100 files 6 different ways? That's, whatever, 6,000 tags that they want me to apply. You can inherit these tags from document sets. So if you had a document set, let's say, that was related to a meeting, so let's say it was a project team or a committee or something like that, and those groups had meetings, you could apply metadata or tags to that document set that says, here's what type of meeting it is, here's what type of group it is, here's the date of the meeting, here's the purpose of the meeting. 5 or 6 things, which isn't arduous to do once. And then every document that gets put in that document set inherits those tags with it as well. So we know that, the agenda and the meeting and the minutes and the issues and the attendees and all these other documents that may contribute to that meeting would inherit those attributes. And so we don't need to ask people on a document by document basis to tag information that granularly. So again, as John mentioned, lots of different options. It's not necessarily a one size fits all and trying to figure out the term store for the whole organization and build consensus. But it's understanding what those options are, what's right for your organization, and then what's right for each group within the organization. So that, again, we can categorize, we can sort, we can secure. You may put workflow around different document types. So again, what are the attributes that are important to us as we store and group this information? So lots of good stuff there as it pertains to tagging and structure.
All right, so with a live demo, where can we start? So it is just a many area to cover. I just want to kind of show a few things. And also when you think about the migration we talk about file server, but that's not a limit. So let me just share my screen here with you and go over a few things here. And if you don't mind, okay. One thing that you want to keep in mind when we're talking about the, allow me 1 second. So when we're talking about the, that's not the one I want, and let's just open the other one. Yes. So when we're talking about the migration, of course, our key talk today is a file server, but that don't limit yourself. So you can retire your box, Dropbox, Google Workspace, and so on. So you also, as I mentioned, your space on the Microsoft 365 is free of charge. Why not take advantage of it and use that? And again, adding a space if you need to run those space, the cost of the additional storage is not much, and that can easily be added at any time. So that's one thing you want to consider. So we talk about the file server, Box, Google, and other tools you use. The other thing that we want to talk about that we mentioned about meta tags, right? So this is a SharePoint site we have here. Let me just change the fonts here. And you can see there is an option of the flat files here, and we have some folders here. So you can see the meta tags are empty. So meta tags also can be selected universally. That doesn't mean that you can let people just type anything you want. If you choose, you can select those areas. So in this case, I'm going to choose this document, look at my meta tags, and look at the tag label. So we do have few things already in place that we can say, okay, you know what? Let's apply these 2 tags to this document and go from there, and so on. So you can control it in a way. And one thing I find with the SharePoint, the search is amazing. Okay, just even in the cases that I do use folders and a directory structure, the search is great. You can go on the top level and try to search for anything up there. Not that just search the title of the document, we'll also search the content of it, and that can be Word, Excel, PowerPoint, or Acrobat files or those things. So the search is very powerful. And again, we only have a limited time today. We just want to kind of show you a few things. So adding the tags. The other thing that I find that even though you move to SharePoint, people like the fact of keeping that structure for the staff going forward. They don't want to necessarily come to SharePoint. So if you're doing that, there's an option to sync. And this sync will sync this directory to your desktop. Same thing as we do OneDrive. You will get a new folder in your Explorer to say name of your organization, and that will show underneath there. So if you're going to go with the tagging and you're going to enable the sync, you also have to keep into consideration that sync level. There's no applying the tag is not going to be easy. Then you need to kind of be you need to come to the SharePoint and monitor that if you're only going with the meta tags, that which document doesn't have a tag and they need to be tagged later. So again, lots of areas to kind of keep into consideration. But I would say the bottom line, moving from file server to SharePoint is a no-brainer and just make your life very easy. That's it.
So maybe, John, could you just go back to that migration page of the migration manager? I just wanted to add a couple of things for users, if that's okay, because
Sure,
I think it's important for them to understand. So as John mentioned, again, Microsoft's had this tool for a while. They acquired Mover.io that gives you a little more flexibility. Again, this tool is free, and it does most of what you need from a file server migration. And so as John shows you this interface, it doesn't necessarily just need to be file shares. You could move content from Box or Dropbox or Google Workspace. Important to understand that those are corporate Box, Google Workspace, and Dropbox accounts. So, what we've had is lots of clients that say, oh, well, we've got Google Drive and the users have their Gmail address tied to it. And how do we, so that's not what this is. This is, we had a Google Workspace 4-point alliance and we want to move that into Microsoft 365. So that's, an important aspect to know. This is the tool that you can use to migrate content from your file shares to OneDrive and Teams and SharePoint. So once, we're not going to go into it today and sort of configure it, but you can map to any of those. Again, important to understand that you need access, obviously, to the files that you're moving. So when we talk about personal files going from, the F or the U drive to OneDrive, you've got to have a migration account that has access to that content. And then as you map it to SharePoint and Teams, We've also found that there's a few challenges sometimes to migrating content into Teams. So what we've had to do is do a workaround in some cases and migrate it to the SharePoint site that supports the Microsoft team. But again, this is, the tool that you can use. It is free and the one that we always start with. There are other third-party tools, and one that we would use if this one isn't doing quite what we need it to do would be from ShareGate. So a lot of you may be familiar with that, but it is a pay tool that I think is $5,000 or $6,000 US. So, we're going to leverage the free tools wherever possible. So I know we're running out of time. I wanted to throw that in quickly at the end, but John, maybe you want to bring it to a close.
Yes, thank you. We have one question, and it's a very good question. Do we need a backup after we move our data to SharePoint? How it is safe from ransomware? So one thing about the Microsoft Cloud is that when you read the documentation within the Microsoft offering, Microsoft offers something called retention, right? So you get a retention period for 1 year and so on. You can set those one, but that's not really true backup. So for ourselves or for clients, what we recommend is a third-party tool like an AvePoint backup, which will back up your entire Microsoft 365 environment. And the great thing about the tool like an AvePoint, that they back it up to the Azure cloud, the dependence on your country. So if you're in Canada, actually you're going to be on the Canadian data center, and if you're US, will be the US data center. So it is stay with your region, which is very important, and will back up the whole thing. So it's a team, a SharePoint, OneDrive, email groups, and so on. So that's what need to be done. And regarding ransomware, there are engines has built into the OneDrive sync to prevent from ransomware move forward. So even if your desktop get attacked by a ransomware, that will never ever get into the Microsoft Cloud environment, right? So it is only your machine being infected if your machine was attacked, or if your environment wasn't secure, will go into your environment, but it will never get to the cloud. And also Microsoft OneDrive has a tools built into it that if you did get attacked by ransomware, can revert your files on your local things, and you can go through the process they provide. Just to bring this to a close, again, please check out our website for our upcoming events. Again, we're running this Solution for Success webinars third Tuesday of each month, so you can see there's other ones come up. We have a full lineup for 2023, so we hope we see you there. And if you did enjoy this session today, please leave us a review. So you can just scan that QR code, and we would greatly appreciate it if you can leave us a review for today's session. Again, this was only half an hour, and I know we are 4 minutes past. This is just to get you going, like I just get you ideas. If you need more information, reach out to us. And we'll be happy to answer it or provide you more detailed demo of the session. That's it. I want to thank you for attending. Thank you, Jonathan, for great insight into the migration from file server to SharePoint. Have a wonderful day. This material going to be posted by tomorrow into our website, our YouTube channel, and you'll be able to access it and share it with your colleagues. That's it. I want to thank you. That brings our session to conclusion. Have a wonderful day.